Hi there. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. At the time that this episode drops, we recognize that the holiday season is in full swing, and you might be caught up in the hustle and bustle of all the activities, but you've chosen to carve out a little time to hang out with us, and we're very grateful for that. And this is actually going to be our last full episode of the year. So next week, we're going to drop a simple step. And then by the time we're back with you for a full episode, it's going to be 2024. Can't believe it.
It's hard to believe.
I know. So I wonder if you could do us a favor before the year closes up. Would you take 2 seconds to rate the show? Just scroll down to the rating section of Spotify or Apple Podcasts and tap the star rating that reflects the value that we brought to you in 2023. We really appreciate your feedback, and it helps other couples like you decide if Blended Family Breakthrough is going to be right for them.
That's right.
So let's see how many ratings that we can share by the end of the year.
Yes, we really appreciate your feedback. And if you have an extra moment, why not leave a review on Apple Podcasts as well? And share in your own words what you've experienced as you've engaged with us here on the show.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. Now, as Mike said, the holidays are upon us, and along with that often comes the challenges of blending holiday traditions. We're sometimes left wondering how to honor those meaningful things that our kids are used to, while simultaneously creating new traditions in our blended family. How do we merge our two family holiday expectations?
Yeah, that can be challenging.
Yep.
You know, a few weeks ago, we had our friends Rich and Stacy on the show to share what they've learned over the past 10 years of blending with 4 kids in their holiday mix.
Right.
Now, their insight was so helpful, and if you missed it, just tap the link in the show notes to check it out. We love having a variety of guests on the show because we believe there's so much value in learning from other people.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've certainly benefited from the wisdom, insight, and practical guidance of other blended couples, as well as experts who've not only lived it, but have invested their education and made it their personal mission to help others along in this journey of blending.
Absolutely. Now, 2 of those experts in the field of relational health and understanding what kids experience through divorce and stepfamily dynamics are Lauren Reitzema and her mom, Janine McKenzie. Now, this mother-daughter duo have lived through what you're going through, and they now offer their expert guidance to help others build healthy relational connections, blend well, and learn how to best support all the kids through the change, the loss, and the grief that comes with all this. Now, 2 years ago, we had Lauren and Janine on the show to talk specifically about the holidays.
Oh, yeah. And that conversation was so rich. It was filled with some real life stories, meaningful insights, and practical strategies for blended family couples as they navigate the holiday season.
Right.
We believe their expert guidance can help all of us to show up well and support our kids through any of the holiday hang-ups that might come our way, right? And to manage our own expectations as well.
Right.
As we were thinking about what to share heading into the holiday weekend, we listened back to this story and we realized it was such a rich discussion that it needed to be revived.
That's right.
So we're sharing a portion of the conversation with Lauren and her mom, Janine, with you today. And our hope is to bring some hope for you and some practical insight as you prepare and equip yourself for whatever celebration you might have coming just right around the corner.
So one leadership expert, Robin Sharma, says this: the real trick in life is to turn hindsight into foresight that reveals insight. Yeah. So our conversation with Lauren and Janine is full of insightful hindsight. So we're grateful for the wisdom that they've each gleaned over the years as they've navigated their own blended family journey, and the unique ability that they have to communicate from the parent's point of view and the child's point of view. Yeah. So as you listen in, we're confident that you can take their insightful hindsight and turn it into your own foresight, if you can follow all that, as you navigate the holidays with your blended family.
Right.
And hopefully you'll experience a few wins, not necessarily perfection, but some success with merging traditions, creating meaningful memories, and experiencing a little magic along the way.
Right. So grab your favorite coffee or a hot chocolate and something to jot down a few notes as you enjoy this conversation with Lauren Reitzema and Janine McKenzie.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Families tend to develop traditions over the years, right? Some of them came from previous generations. They just continue throughout the generations. Others simply develop organically over time. They're like, oh, we'll try this one year. And then all of a sudden, next thing we know, we've got a whole new family tradition.
Right.
We've got quite a few of those, right? And often, I think right after a divorce or the loss of a parent, there's this effort to maintain a lot of those traditions. But after a time, when one or both parents end up remarrying or recoupling, that can have an impact on the traditions that the kids are used to. And maybe those traditions they can even count on at times, right? So I wonder, maybe if either of you might go first, tell us a little bit about your perspective on this important topic for step couples and why they need to pay attention to this as we head into the holiday season.
Well, I just think that, right after the divorce, nothing was the same. Nothing was the same. And I just thought to myself, how do I move forward? How do I move forward with 4 teenagers in the house?
Yeah.
And mostly I asked them,
Okay.
what do we want to keep? What's important to keep? And what's important to start fresh? And one of the things that even when we were our first family, our first legacy, I call it a legacy family, was that Christmas Eve was a big deal.
Okay.
We opened our presents on Christmas Eve. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
We went to a service. We came home. We looked for Santa.
Yep.
We opened our presents until 2:00 in the morning, and we were, ridiculously tired on Christmas Eve.
So that's when it all happened.
Okay.
That's when it all happened. And
Right.
so that was one of the things that the kids said they really wanted to keep.
Okay.
Sure.
And so I actually talked to my husband and said, this is what I really would like to do. This is my expectation for this family. I don't know what you did with your kids. His kids were grown at that point.
Okay.
And he was so great. He just said, whatever, if that's, and Christmas Day, we'll just figure it out. We'll play it by ear. But Christmas Eve is going to be kind of, this is what we're going to do. And we have maintained that.
Sounds like you went through the divorce. You maintained this Christmas Eve tradition during your single parent years. And then as you and Bruce were getting ready to get married or somewhere in that relationship, you set some expectations and say, around this particular thing, this is what I really want to be able to provide
protect
for my
it.
kids.
This is what I really want to have as our tradition moving forward. Everything else, is negotiable.
Okay.
But this is really where I want to, and I would suggest that anybody who is in that place of dating somebody with a former family and having the blended family prior to the commitment is to have a book of expectations, to really knock it out with a binder and write it down. Because I can tell you that while we were dating and life was good and there's a lot of the motivation to love on you, right? You write down the expectations, and we have come back to this book. We have come back to say, because we kind of gotten askance and we kind of fight about things, and I go, oh, no. This was something we talked about.
Here it is in the book.
It's in writing.
It's in writing. Let's go
I
back.
love that. I love that.
And let's outline it, you know, and say, you agreed to this, you know, what's happening? What happened that we're now fighting over this? Because this was the agreement that we had earlier.
Yeah.
And the mom just talked about the Christmas Eve setting. That was sacred. That was really important.
Mm-hmm.
I, to this day, treasure opening presents on Christmas Eve and staying up really late and then just being in pajamas all day Christmas morning.
Yep.
We don't get up early to open presents like a majority of
Sure.
the Western U.S. culture, and that's fine. But that came from our tradition. But what we do on Christmas Eve had room to change, because what's equally as hard from a child's perspective is trying to replicate a sameness in a tradition that is vastly different, with different family people, different family structure, different food on the table. And so where we found some middle ground there was we always celebrate Christmas Eve with the nuclear side of our bio siblings. Step siblings are not allowed to come to Christmas Eve. And it's not because we don't love them and we don't care deep for them, but that was kind of the one sacred space we drew a boundary around, that this is the only place we will ever have our bio sibling identity together. However, we started doing fondue because my stepdad grew up with fondue in his Christmas tradition.
Nice.
And we'd never had that before. And that became something that was so new and so welcomed and really dressed up and fun. And we got to linger and just, you know, see the bubbling of the meat and the vegetables and all the things on the plate. And it really actually gelled a new identity on Christmas Eve that was still traditional and rooted, but that had some flavor and flair of my stepdad and his tradition. And I actually write about this in the book, but one year, after almost a decade of this tradition, he tried to change it up and get my Italian grandmother to cook lasagna. And we all boycotted Christmas dinner that night. We were so angry.
We want fondue.
He thought, well, what's the big deal? We're eating dinner. But he didn't realize that he was uprooting the one blended family tradition that was organic and welcomed with joy. And he was trying to throw in a curveball, and we were not having it because that was a unifying agent in our glue at the time. So in a couple weeks, when we gather on Christmas Eve and drink lots of espresso to stay up till 2 a.m., there will be fondue on our wall.
Awesome.
That's great. You know, I heard a couple of principles, I think, in there, and I wonder if this sounds right to you. One of them is all about figuring out and navigating this way to honor the old while we're introducing the new. You know, and Janine, I love the way that you said, you know, I just asked my kids, hey, what was the most important thing? And we found out to them what was really most important was this Christmas Eve experience that they've had for so long. And so that's one principle. The other principle that I think I heard in there as well is how to really cherish the bio unit. Now, for you, you know, I think I heard in your story a little while ago, Janine, that Bruce's kids were all grown adults
out of the house
when you married, and they were out of the house. And so for your unique story, it made sense to capture some time for you and your 4 teenagers, just for you as a bio unit plus Bruce, it sounds like. For other families, that specific thing may not work, but the principle behind it is, how do we really engage our bio units and love each other well and experience that well? Do those 2 principles sound right to you?
Yeah, I think that there is an attempt in blended families, and I'm going to speak from experience. Oh, we're just all going to love each other, and we're all going to be this one big happy family. Yeah. And I just think that that's not realistic.
Really? You didn't watch the Brady Bunch growing up, Janine?
Yeah, right. That's Hollywood. But the passive aggressive, all those things come out when you try to do that. And so I said to Bruce, this is going to be something that we're going to be intentional about. and we're going to love your children in this way. This is how I'm going to love your children.
Yeah.
But this is how I'm going to love my children.
Mm-hmm.
And my children, it's, the way I said is, don't ever make me choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never make you choose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want time to love on my children without your children being in the mix.
Yeah.
And I want you to have time
Mm-hmm.
to love on your children
Mm-hmm.
without my children being in the mix.
Right.
And here's why that's actually a boundary that can create a healthy blend,
Mhm.
because the realism in that, to be able to say, there's an almost perfect stranger in my home, engaging in the most intimate of family traditions,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
in our pajamas, with our robes on, with bad breath and no makeup. And I don't do Christmas morning or Christmas Eve with just anyone. This is my family. This is
Right.
15, 20 years
Right.
of upbringing with this unit. And then so to say, because of a time, date, and place and wedding vows, all of a
Mhm.
sudden this person is now welcome into that intimacy is
Mhm.
not real. However, with time and patience and incremental change, just like the incremental change that bonds a tradition in the first place, you actually can integrate the blend in a very holistic and very relevant and meaningful way, as opposed to that bomb dropping and you just feeling like the shrapnel is tearing your heart apart. And I feel like there are sometimes there are these guards up to say, well, man, I'm going to hurt feelings if your bio family goes and watches a Christmas movie and my bio family goes and gets brunch, and then we're leaving each other out. However, that refreshment and that safety to then come back and maybe have the blended lunch after
Yes.
you've had mornings to yourself will actually enhance the blend, because you're all filled up with that safety that's
Mhm.
always on edge when you have a new person lurking over your shoulder.
That's right.
And it took me a long time, especially with a stepdad figure as a grown adult woman,
Mhm.
to let a new adult male into that intimate space in my interior of my house.
Right.
And that's not something you really think about, but man, I've got a robe on, and
Yeah.
with my dad, he
Yeah.
changed my diapers. He saw
Yeah.
me. He saw
Yeah. Big deal, right? Yeah.
This guy did not. And therefore I feel like I need to go get dressed and put together
Mhm.
before I can even see him for coffee.
Mhm.
And that's something that's really unspoken that I don't think really fleshes itself out, so that
Yeah.
it's okay to have some separation and autonomy. I think sometimes that
Right.
actually helps the blend.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things I see and I hear, and we're in the relationship space, so this is what we do for our company.
Mhm.
Right.
But one of the things I hear women, mothers saying to their children, "Can you just be nice to him?"
Mhm.
And instead of saying, "Help me understand what you're feeling,"
Yes.
Mhm.
because fine, it's like, say you're sorry. Well, say you're sorry. That really needs to come from the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Saying the words don't make it so.
Right.
Yes.
In the way of, what do you mean just be nice to him? I maybe they don't like him. Maybe they feel vulnerable, like
Mhm.
Lauren was talking about. We're not attached yet. I don't
Mhm.
feel like I can be vulnerable with him. He's not my
Mhm.
dad.
Mhm.
She's not my mom.
Mhm.
Okay. Allow your children to speak their heart to you,
Mhm. Yes.
and don't tell them how to feel.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Just allow them to feel.
Right.
Yes.
And that's not to say that we
Mhm.
don't set some boundaries around, hey, in this house, we're going to be civil and we're going to,
Right.
speak kindly to
Respectful.
each other and respectful. But that's a lot different to say, hey, can you help me understand what's going on for you? And, as we process that, and by the way, I do expect civility in our home. That's a lot different than like
Just
you said
be
earlier.
nice.
Hey, can't you
Yeah.
just be nice to him?
Yeah.
Two totally different conversations.
Well, I remember my stepdad saying, I love you guys so much because I just love your mom and you're an extension of your mom. And
Yeah.
Mm.
I, forgive me, but I was calling BS on that because,
Yeah.
that'd be like throwing a college fraternity party and saying, because I'm dating you, I love your friends because they live in the same dormitory. No,
Sure.
that's not how love works. And I'm giving you permission to love my mom. Go do your
Right.
thing.
Right.
But you you do not love me yet because you hardly know me. And until you can prove that you're willing to know me outside of my mom, without her in the picture, without her pressuring me to come alongside and welcome you in, I just give me some space, give me some time. And I think he's seen me come around.
For sure.
Yeah. We've recently heard this term intimate strangers. And I heard you bring both those words up when you were describing what it felt like to have a new stepdad there Christmas Eve. And you are intimate strangers. You don't know each other in the beginning, and that takes time. And I think one of the difficulties comes when we recouple and we're excited to move on and start new traditions, and the adults kind of want to leave the past in the past and let's do something new now. And come on, kids, this is going to be great. And usually the kids are in a very different place. And so rushing in to build new traditions right out of the gate, moving too fast can be really uncomfortable because, like you said, you don't even know this person yet. And so how do you include them in that intimate, precious time that you have as a family that you've experienced for years?
It has to be incremental.
It does.
I think you used that word earlier. Like Ron Deal often says, slowing down speeds things up. And I think that's just so true.
Yes.
I tell a story. I haven't actually, this one, I don't think made the pages of In Their Shoes, but I remember it like yesterday, and it was around Christmas time. So because we're talking about Christmas tradition, it was one of the first Christmas Eves that my stepdad was an actual stepdad, that he was not dating my mom anymore. We were part of the wedding, and we were celebrating Christmas Eve at their house. And at the time, my dad and stepmom lived pretty far away, about 4.5 hour drive away. And we had arranged the schedule, as most stepkids do, so that we could spend, Christmas Eve with mom and stepdad, and then have some margin and spend Christmas Day with dad and stepmom. And we were all merrily on our way. And, you guys are in the Pacific Northwest, what snow and rain and ice look like. And it happened to be Christmas time in Colorado, which you can imagine. There sometimes it's some beautiful snow when you're sitting by a fire in your pajamas opening presents. That snow is not so beautiful when it's almost midnight and you're crossing windy, snow-blown, hard visibility stretches of ice in the dark after leaving a really warm, cozy fire with mom and stepdad to go and do part 2. And I'll never forget it. We were in an old Jeep Cherokee with probably a broken heater. And it was one of my brothers was driving, and he was white knuckling it. And I feel safe with my brothers. They're great drivers. And we were all feeling really vulnerable for our safety. We were cold. We had never been to this house before because my dad and stepmom had recently moved. And we were verbalizing our anger in that car. Just how unfair is this? That it's Christmas Eve, and mom and Bruce get to be sitting by a fire saying, probably talking about how we treated them. And, how do we do this? Did we do this? Okay. How was the food? Okay. I'm sure they're just decompressing about everything that happened with this new blended family. And here we are white knuckling it. And when we get to the other side, we're going to have a whole new family dynamic, new expectations. Are we going to be polite enough to our stepmom? Are we going to have enough energy? Are we going to be gracious enough when we open the presents? Are we and the emotional drain that I felt in the physical and emotional space on that journey, that 4-hour trek across the snow, was definitely not from the song, to grandmother's house we go. No. It was more of a
wasn't a one-horse open sleigh.
No, there was no sleigh. Santa and his reindeers were very far away. And I don't think either parent in that episode of memory would have even had the data to know to say, thank you for what you did to get here. Thank you for sacrificing. Thanks for paying for your own gas. I mean, it's that level of nuance that never makes it to the dinner table. What we end up hearing is how ungracious we were, or how grumpy we are, or how tired we look, and it just, enough is enough after a certain amount of time. And the expectations to just divide your life and do things perfectly twice is not helpful.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted listening to you describe that scene. I mean, that's exhausting.
I think my brother got a new car the next year.
I hope so.
It's a very sketchy stretch of road.
Probably. I think whether you're, driving across a frozen tundra for 4 hours, or whether you're, driving 5 blocks to get to that transition point between homes, as a kid, sometimes we're just white knuckling it emotionally.
Yeah.
Trying to make that transition. And I think it's hard, as parents, we want to receive the kids, and we're so glad that they're home, and we're excited to see them. That it's our time to have them. And yet having some grace and space to be able to let them, release the wheel a little bit, let the blood flow get back to the fingers, and we're not quite white knuckling it anymore. Those transitions are hard, and we need to recognize that. And for most blended families with kids moving back and forth, there's a transition of some kind around the holidays. Yeah. And it's something that we really need to pay attention to. So how can we let, our kids decompress a little bit and have the security in ourselves as parents to be able to hear the discomfort that they're experiencing so that they can maybe decompress a little bit more effectively? Yeah. I don't know. What thoughts do you have around that?
Well, one of the things that in child development that I do a lot of work in child development and human capital development. And one of the things I really think that we should suggest in children moving back and forth, I think that the parents should move back and forth in the different houses and the children to stay put.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the adults are the adults.
Sure.
And what we know from the research is that children need consistency, predictability, calm. They don't need chaos. And when you divorce, and then that's one set of chaos. Right. And then you add another family, there you go again with another set of chaos. And I truly believe that children's, even their development suffers. Yeah. And if they're adolescents, you get that anger pushback from the adolescents. If they're little ones, they don't know how they're feeling, so they go to their room, or they withdraw. I just feel like parents are the adults. They should move. They should move the houses so the kids can stay in one house.
We actually had a family
friend, that did that
out right after their divorce for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. The parents would
rotate to the house, and the child stayed in one home.
Good for them.
Yeah,
I think there's a term for it. I think it's called nesting. I've heard that out there. I don't know if that's official or not, but
that might work in the initial transition. But moving another spouse in the mix is probably
and it did bring up other issues too, as I recall.
I love that commitment. I would say though, there's, for me, the most practical advice that I would maybe offer, not as an expert or somebody who says it must be this way, but I think that some of the exhaustion and the back and forth is truly in the limited margins of the actual day, place, time. And, we all have watched the Four Christmases movie that's comical, and who doesn't love Reese Witherspoon and all the fun. The dynamics play out pretty exaggerated, but some of them are spot on. And I think if you can just potentially let a kid have their rest and their place, and maybe you actually deem a different day, Christmas, on the calendar, and you don't try and do it all within that 48-hour span of time, because I literally see, and I was the child who, you've got 4 hours here and 2 hours there, and then a commute, and then this. And by the time you've gotten through your restful, magical holidays, even as a child who has boundless energy, you're just poured out. And that increases the stress when you try and go back, and it increases. And so just what could we do to linger by the fire a little bit more? Maybe we're with mom and stepdad every other year for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And then on the 27th, after a gap day through the 29th, we replicate a Christmas tradition at the other house. We work with a lot of groups that have limited setting exposure that aren't even blended families, that are medical doctors or emergency responders. And they're trying to establish these traditions for their families that aren't even blended, but they are on call for these big holidays, and they have to. And one of the coping mechanisms is actually choosing a different physical day.
Right.
And so as much as that's hard to let go of that grip of control and say, but this is my Christmas and it's on the calendar, they still play Christmas music on the 27th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that might create a little bit more respite for the back and forth stress of fitting it within a timeline.
Yeah, that's really good. And, however that plays out practically, I think in general, what I'm hearing is, how can we create a moment or a space for the kids to just kind of decompress and actually get that rest and allow it to be magical? Things are magical when they just kind of unfold and they don't just happen so quickly, and, they're not forced and, we're on an agenda and, you got to get to the other house. We better hurry up. That's not quite so magical. Right. But as it unfolds over a reasonable amount of time, we're creating some great memories there, which ultimately begins to build some of those bonds that we can create as a family. So whether it's the 25th or the 27th, are we really after hitting the day, or are we really after building those connections and those shared memories together in a lower tension environment?
Anything you can do to release the pressure.
For sure.
And open up for more enjoyment.
Right. There's a story that it's not about Christmas so much, but it does really reflect giving your child permission to love the step parent. Because and I'll give you a story. I was driving my youngest daughter, taking her to school, and she had all this stuff in her backpack, all this Claire's feather pens and and I looked at her and said, "Where did you get all that?" And she kind of held it to her chest like she was ashamed. And I said, "Are you shoplifting? I mean, I didn't give you the money to get all that."
Yeah.
She said, "Mom, I got it from my stepmom."
Mm.
And I saw her face, and she was really red and she was really upset. And I pulled over to the side of the road just to focus on her. And I said, "You know what I'm going to do? You don't ever have to be ashamed of getting stuff from your stepmom. You're so lucky. You have so many people that love you, including your stepmom. And I give you permission to love her."
Good for you.
I love that.
Janine. That's wonderful.
Because she's not going to replace me. Nobody's going to replace me.
Yeah.
Right? Have that confidence that nobody can be your mom. Right. Your mom is your mom.
Yeah.
Right.
The confidence and the security.
Yeah.
And the security. Right. So I saw her calm down. And when she would talk about her stepmom, I would never get angry. I would always welcome more information because it really helped her. I gave her permission to love her.
Perfect. And what a great opportunity as kids are going back and forth this holiday season to just encourage them to have fun with that other family, to enjoy their time. And when we can free them to do that, it frees them from the binds that they get into around love between mom and stepmom, dad and stepdad, and these two confusing places that I just want to be me. You're freeing, you freed your daughter up in that moment to really allow her to escape that bind
and release that responsibility, like Lauren was talking about earlier, of wanting to protect her parents and not hurt them. So I'm going to be quiet and not say anything.
Yeah.
When you're honoring that other home and allowing the child to enjoy both parents in the other home, you're releasing them from that burden of having to protect you or make sure you're okay.
Absolutely.
So that's a great point.
What a great story.
And I thought of something in this transition question about kind of the reverse order of agenda. Typically in our human experience, when you have a really fun holiday, it starts with a meal, and then you open presents, and then you do the gingerbread houses, and then you kind of slowly unwind and get in your pajamas and watch a movie and do the cocoa and then tuck into bed. And I just thought about, even as adults, if you're like me, not everybody's a coffee drinker, but sometimes all you need is that tradition of just a hot cup of coffee with something to read in your robe before you start the shower, before you do your hair, before you get into your routine. And what if in the handoff for these Christmas pass-offs, for Christmas Eve to Christmas morning or Christmas Day to Christmas night or whatever the next day, what if you reverse engineered that cool down time with the pajamas and the cocoa and the Christmas movie? And that was the very first thing that welcomed the kids to the new house. And then you didn't go straight into we're going to eat breakfast and we're going to throw on we have to open all our presents and we're going to do the Christmas craft and make the ornaments. And what if you started with, hey, welcome, I have a cup of hot cocoa and you guys can stay in your pajamas and we're going to actually just go and watch The Grinch. And it's 90 minutes and we don't have to talk to each other and we're just going to laugh. It's going to be background. And then when the movie's over, we can start our Christmas agenda and just almost reverse engineer that downtime in the beginning as opposed to getting there toward the end.
Yeah. I
love that.
I love That's a great idea.
I love that idea. I think another great tip for parents is when you do pick up your kids after they've spent time in the other home, let's say they're over there first and then they come to your home, is kind of assess where they're at emotionally and give them an opportunity to process if they need to. Yeah. I remember when our daughter, when she was younger, she would be at her dad's, doing all the hoopla. And then she'd come to our house and she would be really quiet and disappointed. And it was because she was having a great time at her dad's. Yeah. She had opened some great presents and she wanted to play with them and she was having fun with her siblings over there. And then she was just yanked out of that environment. And even though she was excited about coming and being with us, she had all these mixed emotions because she was also missing them. And so I learned that when she would come, especially on holidays, I would ask, how were things over at your dad's? Tell me about what what was your favorite present? What are you looking forward to playing with when you go back over there tomorrow? And just let her process. And if she needed to be sad or upset or disappointed, let her express that. Let your kids talk about what they're feeling because there can be so many mixed emotions going on. You described as an adult, Lauren, all of the mixed emotions you had. And it doesn't matter how old kids are.
Yeah, we gotta give space for that. I think is what I'm hearing,
and not be offended and hurt by it. I could have been like, "Well, great, our Christmas is ruined because you're in a bad mood." But we can get really self-focused as parents. I can,
we sure can. Yeah.
But really expecting it. Yeah. And having some empathy that, there might be some things that come up and that's okay. And then applying what you were just talking about, Lauren, that reverse, start out slow. I love that idea.
I love it too. And, I would encourage people to try it. You might be listening today and going, I think I'm going to give that a try. You know what? I bet you'll find. I bet, that we're going to watch The Grinch. It's 90 minutes. Here's everybody's cocoa. I bet you get about 15 or 20 minutes in and one of the kids is going to be like,
I wonder what's in that present.
When are we going to open the presents, right? And before you know, people are, everybody's going to start getting engaged and
maybe let them set the pace of how fast things move along. That would be a great idea. I love that, Lauren.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that.
We'll see if it works. Just give us a feedback loop because it
was there. You go. That's right.
Totally spontaneous idea. I just had a vision of what that could look like. As an opportunity. A lot of things are trial and error, and sometimes something works for one dynamic and it totally flops with another. So I think just being open to opportunity and releasing some of that duplication expectation. You were talking, Kim, about even downloading what happened at Dad's house, and that's really good for emotional process. It can also backfire in a way where I don't want to tell you what happened at Dad's house. I already told him what I was going to do over here. And
I'm tired of talking.
I'm tired of talking. And it's exhausting for so many reasons to try and duplicate yourself. And I think one of the things that comes over time that frees step parents and bio parents, I'm not a step parent or bio parent myself from a blended family in my nuclear design, but I am a child of that legacy. And I will say that sometimes surrendering your right to know the whole story is what happens as a result of divorce. And I wish we could just say, but it's my child and I know everything about them and I know all the things. It's just simply not true.
Yeah.
When they cannot puppeteer or videotape the authenticity of what they've experienced on the other side, you lose insight into that. You don't have a Ring doorbell following them around. And if you do, that's another podcast issue of stalking.
Yes, definitely.
But the idea of, I need to let go of a part of my child that I don't get visibility into, which I can only imagine the grief of that. But maybe even without a blend, when you launch a child to college, which I haven't had to do yet, there's a huge part of their life that you no longer are seeing. And eventually you have to trust that they're living the path that was placed for them. And it's not their fault. Yeah, they're not showing you 360 degrees of their person.
Absolutely. And I love that you just said that at the end there, Lauren, because I think even those of us that have experienced nuclear family, there's a false sense of belief that we do know everything that's going on in our kid's life. But I mean, even at a very young age, you don't know exactly what's being talked about out on the playground at recess for those 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? There are these
can't
little
know
pockets
it all.
of time, even at the youngest age. And then your thought process in launching kids to college. We just launched one to college in September, and we're realizing just how much of her life we don't know right now. We're going, oh yeah, this is kind of a normal piece of life.
Yeah.
And so absolutely being able to just release that and relinquish it and trust that you're going to know the things that are the most important and be able to respond to them with empathy, like we talked about earlier, and love and grace and acceptance. Gosh, you're not going to get everything you want.
No.
But you can really make sure that the needs of the relationship are met, and you can thrive in the midst of that. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, this has really been a great discussion.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for being a part of it. I wonder if we could, Janine, I wonder if you could just give one encouragement here at the end or recommendation as everybody marches toward the Christmas holiday. What might it be?
Well, I think one of the things that has been really a helpful formula for my family and my relationship with my husband is to sit down before the holidays, before the big, couple of days. Okay, like Lauren said, it's those 2 days that are so packed.
Yep.
What are your expectations here?
Yeah.
What are your expectations? And then
put them in the book.
Right, it's in the book. That's what it talks about. Is writing down what your expectations are, and then having a discussion. Are they realistic? Is there something that this is how I'm going to handle this? Because I think that really comes. Everybody gets to say what they want, and then you get to adapt it to what is realistic.
Absolutely. That's so good. Lauren, what's one encouragement or recommendation you might make as we close up?
I would say sometimes when it comes to the holidays, especially, the vision in your dream is best left minimized a bit.
Sure.
And leaving some space and margin in your heart to actually embrace and receive those little glimmers of true dreams that are microcosms of goodness that sometimes get just eclipsed by all of what you thought was not. And so I think I'm rarely somebody who says lower the bar.
Yeah.
But in this case, turn off the Hallmark movie, get in touch with the trauma and the experience of loss and pain that is for so many of us, even without divorce around the holidays, just because of the high pressure to be in a snow globe, and take the joy and fight for joy with incremental wins, and don't try and get the whole gingerbread house in one bite, but maybe have a little gumdrop here and there, and you will have a much tastier treat.
And savor the gumdrop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sounds like, I love what you're saying there, letting letting that kind of the dream experience emerge over time and not trying to orchestrate it or force it to fit a mold or fit what you think it should be.
Which means we're going to have to let go of some agendas. Absolutely. And that's hard.
Well, Janine, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I'm positive it's going to bring value to our listeners. We hope that you have a really Merry Christmas.
Yes.
And a wonderful New Year as well.
Yes.
You the same to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Man, what a great conversation with Lauren and Janine. We really appreciate how open they are in sharing the tough stuff that comes with divorce and remarriage for both parents and for kids. Right. We hope that you are encouraged by their journey of hope and healing. Yeah. And while their perspectives are unique, most blended families can relate to the emotional struggles and the logistical challenges and changes that blended families experience through the holidays. So hopefully you were able to glean some new insight and maybe some helpful foresight from Lauren and Janine's hindsight and expert advice.
Yeah. And by the way, several years ago, Lauren published an amazing book called In Their Shoes, helping parents better understand and connect with children of divorce.
Yeah.
Lauren's insider knowledge will equip you to support your kids well and create more connection in your blended family. We talked about her book back in episode 40, and we'll put a link in the show notes to that episode and Lauren's book if you want to learn more.
Absolutely. More recently, Lauren and Janine co-authored a book called Relationship Essentials, and it's skills to feel heard, fight fair, and set boundaries in all areas of life. And you know what? Janine founded the Center for Relationship Education a few years back, and currently Lauren is the interim president of that. And their expert knowledge helps people experience healthy dynamics and deeper connection in all of their relationships. So we're going to put a link in the show notes to that book as well. But for now, we just want to say thanks so much for listening. We wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, and we hope that you have a wonderful New Year as well.
Yes.
And that's going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.